What is up, everybody? I hope you are having a fantastic evening. News just keeps on breaking, changing, twisting, turning when it comes to the San Francisco 49ers and this defensive coordinator position. But don't worry, I'm sure they've got it all under control. All right. Welcome back to Last Second Sports, where we are giving you our take down to the last second. And it's a beautiful Wednesday evening. Very, very cold here in Florida. Wearing a sweatshirt inside, not ideal, but here we are. Middle of winter, like 40 something degrees here. Not used to it. Hope you all are doing great. I see Orlando's in here. What's up, Orlando? Daniel's already upset with me. Shout out to Daniel. He listen, I make a title, I'm going to explain where I'm coming from, but I don't even get a chance to explain without being called a cone clone. I guess you're damned if you do and damned if you don't. You know what I mean, Daniel? You know what I'm talking about. But it's interesting because he doesn't like that I use the word desperate, but Baldwin was just in another chat, he says, using the word desperate. So we'll see, man. We will see. Hey, what's up? I'm glad that you were able to catch me, Miles. Appreciate you. And Pete would be leaps and bounds better than anyone we could get. Well, we'll see about that. But let me explain where I'm coming from as far as getting a little bit desperate. And I want to start with what Kyle Shanahan himself said. Okay. Don't take it from me. Don't take their word from me. I don't want to twist it and turn it or anything like that. I want you to hear what Kyle Shanahan said, and then let's dissect it. And you tell me if they've done what he said they were going to do. Make sure, give me a thumbs up if you can hear this when I put it on the screen, by the way.
Back years, you fired your defensive coordinator after 1 year.
You guys hear that? We good to go? Just let me know. I know you guys are on about a 5-second delay. Good? Okay, cool.
Back-to-back years, you fired your defensive coordinator after 1 year. Do you have to go back through the process of this, Hans? I know both different situations. Were there things that went wrong in the process to find these last two guys?
I don't believe anything went wrong in the process. I think I'll tell you what, it's a I think more opportunistic or easier process talking about it right now and whatever the date is today. It's a little bit harder in February, which the last two were in. Being the last team to finish last year, and before that, being the second to last team to finish makes it a lot different. So there's more opportunities out there, and plan on looking into all of them.
Would experience being a defensive coordinator be important to you this time?
Yeah, I think some of the stuff that, just where we're at, some of the decisions that we got to make and things like that. I think having the experience of going through this before, building things before, I think is definitely a bonus for me. It helps me with some stuff, so that's stuff I will look into. But again, you always, regardless, you don't want to put just any handcuffs on your decision. You're going to always try to figure out the best one, and so you got ideas going into that. But this being so early, I'm going to have an opportunity to talk to a number of guys too. So we'll see what that leads us to.
We're going to have the opportunity to talk to a number of guys because of the situation that they're in, meaning they're getting a jump start on the offseason because they didn't play in a Super Bowl like they did last year, which really put them behind the 8 ball when it came to hiring. As you know, a lot of those jobs are already taken. That's fair. That is actually fair. I think that's a fair assessment of what happened last year. The problem is that this was not recorded yesterday. This was recorded 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago to today, since he said those words. How many people have they interviewed? One person. One person that they didn't already have an astute awareness of. They know exactly who Staley is. He's been in the building all year. Interviewing Staley does what? You know what he brings to the table. Interviewing Robert Saleh does what? You know what he brings to the table. He was here for multiple years. They've interviewed one person for that job outside of this organization that they didn't have a good awareness of who they were, and that was Deshae Townsend. That is it in 2 weeks. And what they've done since then is decided they wanted Robert Saleh, which is fine. And they've waited and waited and waited and waited. And by the time we know if Robert Saleh is going to be available, which, by the way, if he becomes available and he ends up here, they got bailed. They simply got bailed. But that doesn't mean that the process was right. Listen, I'm not going to come in after the fact and say, hey, guys, everything was wrong after I didn't say jack squat for 3 weeks, because that would be hypocritical. I'm out in front of this. And I said it 2 weeks ago, by the way. The day that Josina Anderson said, hey, they're going to heavily pursue Robert Saleh, I said then, might want to be careful with that, because Robert Saleh, I believe, has a really good chance to get that Jaguars head coaching job. And here we are, and it looks like he's the front runner now that Balky's out and Liam Cohen pulled his name from the search. So this isn't like, oh, after the fact, I'm going to cook the 49ers. I laid the groundwork 2 weeks ago that this was a possibility. And now we are here. It's one thing to have a favorite. It's another to just let every other candidate come off the board, knowing that he was one of, if not the favorite to land that job. The 49ers knew that. It's not like we know. We just knew, and somehow they head in the sand. They had no idea. They knew. They've interviewed one person. That's it. So on their own words, they were excited about this process and to go through it properly and have a bunch of interviews. And even Tim Kawakami, who is very pro 49ers when he reports, framed it as if there was a bit of panic today when Robert Saleh was basically announced as the favorite. Like, where is this coming from? How could this be? We thought he was. How are you having panic? The only way that panic happens is if you don't have a plan. That's why I titled this, The 49ers Are Getting Desperate. Because out of nowhere, all of a sudden, Pete Carroll might maybe be a candidate, according to Tim Kawakami. Well, guess what? Pete Carroll is the favorite to land the Raiders head coaching job. They don't have a plan outside of Robert Saleh. It was literally Robert Saleh or bust. That was reported. Robert Saleh or bust about a week and a half ago. It's like, okay, well, that's strong words, but surely they're going to interview other people, right? Nope. No, they're not. They're not interviewing anybody else. Okay, well, that's a little weird, but surely it's not Saleh or bust. They've got a backup plan, right? No, they're frantic because today they learned that Robert Saleh is the favorite. So is it not fair to say that they seem a little bit desperate? I think it's pretty fair. And when I look at this search or lack thereof, Pete Carroll is a great name. Pete Carroll is very enthusiastic, assuming that he would even want to come here if he doesn't get a head coaching job himself. But Pete Carroll has not been the director of a defense and called the defense for quite some time himself. And anybody who's been around here for a long time can attest to that I have been propping up the Seattle Seahawks talent level on defense for a couple of years. And it was a shock to me when not this last season, but the season before, they were way below what I had as expectations for them defensively. And it was because, and I pointed this out many, many, many times on this channel, through tweets, whatever, the records are there, that, wow, schematically, they look like they're in the 1960s. This is not a very sound defense when it comes to schematics. This defense doesn't do anything special. I talked about their offense in the same light, actually. But Carroll was the head coach of that team. That defense was ran by a guy that he put into place and approved week in and week out, the game plan by him, the head coach. So 2 years out of the game at 73 years old, he's going to come in and now start calling the defense and be legit? Maybe. I guess. But that's also if he doesn't get a head coaching job. And he looks like he's the favorite to do so. And then let's talk about this. I think this is a good point. Jared says, why do people think that Staley would be a bad hire? His only year as defensive coordinator, he had the number 1 defense. I don't know that he would or would not be, but I can tell you that the 49ers have essentially told you he wouldn't be a good hire because they haven't hired him. They haven't put him at the front of their list. They could have last year, and they decided to go with a guy in-house that had never been a defensive coordinator. And they could have now, and they decided to wait week after week for a potential reunion with Robert Saleh. And not only that, the Los Angeles Rams, who he was the defensive coordinator with in that, I believe it was 2020 season, the COVID season, which, by the way, anything that happened in the COVID season is a little bit bizarre to me. I don't know how much I can trust that anyways. That was just a strange season altogether. But during that season where he was had the number 1 ranked defense, last year, the Rams had an open defensive coordinator position. They didn't even bring him in for an interview. It was very similar to the situation the 49ers are in now, where their previous defensive coordinator, who they love, and Robert Saleh, got fired from being a head coach. They know he's produced here. They obviously like him. They're doing everything they can to bring him back within their power. They'll make him the highest paid defensive coordinator in the league. They're just waiting to see if he gets a head coaching position. It's not like the Rams brought him in and was like, hey, he wants to go elsewhere, or he's got a potential shot at a head coaching job. They didn't even look at him as an option to bring him back. So that tells me a lot too. So the 49ers and the Rams have essentially said, not that good. That's what they've told us. So, and not only that, but there were a lot of players off the record that have come out from the Chargers and saying, like, this guy's an arrogant jerk. We didn't like playing for him at all. So listen, he may be good, but you have to overlook a lot of stuff to be excited about that hire. You'd have to look over a lot of stuff to be excited about that hire. Dave says, very cold. My water has been frozen for 5 days, Jess. Listen, I lived in cold climates as well in the past. And I was explaining this to Coach today because he called me a baby when I told him it was 48 and I was on my walk. And he's like, it's 4 degrees here. Quit whining. I said, I get it. But at the same time, when you don't live in that climate anymore, and it's been about 6 years for me, your blood thins out and you are not used to that cold weather. So 40 something degrees here is freezing cold. Freezing cold. Plants die like they're not used to it. It's crazy. Dave says, if Staley was available, would anyone else want him? He is available. He's literally available. Anybody could hire him as a defensive coordinator. Anybody. And nobody even interviewed him. So I think the answer is no. He's available. He could take interviews at that position, and nobody's reached out. At least reportedly, nobody's reached out. Dave Barclay says they fired Balky just so Saleh would be head coach. Done. It does seem that way. Robert Saleh is friends with the owner of the Jaguars. They decided to keep Balky. Now, all of a sudden, a day or two before his second interview, they're firing Balky. It certainly seems to be lining up that way. But maybe, just maybe, their owner had a change of heart, realized Balky's not the guy. Liam Cohen was the guy that he wanted. He turned it down mainly because Bulky was there. And he's looking at it saying, okay, I got to get rid of Bulky if I want to bring in more qualified candidates and drum up some interest here. So maybe that's all he's trying to do. Or maybe he is just trying to hire Robert Saleh, who wants Bulky gone. Both are possible. We'll find out soon. Randall said, why would the Jags want Saleh being a defensive guy versus an offensive head coach to focus on Lawrence, a.k.a. the Bears hiring an offensive mind for Caleb to develop? They just had an offensive guy. And it didn't work out in Peterson. And a lot of teams do this where it's like, okay, well, we had an offensive coordinator or an offensive guy. It didn't work out. So now we want a defensive guy and vice versa. It's just what bad organizations do. They should want the best guy. And it actually does sound like they did want an offensive guy. He just decided to stay in Tampa. Their preference was Liam Cohn, and then Robert Saleh was number 2, and Liam decided to stay. So Robert Saleh it is, or seemingly. Dave says Lyle Shenanigans is mixing it up by not hiring. That's you know what it's like? Anybody seen the movie Austin Powers? When he's playing poker and he has like a 7-2 offsuit and he's like, I'll stay. It's like, sir, you have a 7-2 offsuit. And he's like, I also like to live life dangerously. That's Kyle Shanahan right now, it feels like. Sir Cash Money says, why do you who do you main in Marvel Rivals? I'm an admin main. An Adam main. You asked this question on the Ask Me Anything, and you may not have seen it, Sir Cash Money. But I assume that's a video game. I don't play it. If that's the case and Gambit's available, that's who it would be. Big Gambit guy over here. Favorite X-Men. Cryptic says, front office acting like they have an NFC title game. Where is the interviews? What's annoying, Jesse, is that the Niners think nothing is wrong. No scheme changes. D needs a coach on the sidelines, someone to hype them up, but yet doesn't bring Super Bowls. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, we're just complainers, you know? I mean, everything's great. The 6-11 was a fluke. It was injuries. They're going to bounce back. All their big name superstars that are a year older and coming off of injuries. Don't worry about that. They're going to be fine, guys. They're fine. We're just complainers over here. I'm just a Grant Cohn wannabe, and you guys aren't real fans. You're the fakeful, you know, when you question things. So don't do that. Just believe, man. Everything's fine. Keep buying merchandise and those season tickets, though. All right. HBO says, only thing Kyle and John know how to do well lately is pacify the fans by saying things that they want to hear, but common sense needs to set in after this. Yeah, I mean, listen, how great was it? And I know this to be true because a lot of people talked about it for weeks. Like, guys, Sorensen's going to be fine. They wanted somebody, the players wanted somebody who was already with this staff. He's going to be fine. And the fact that they went after Spagnuolo and Bill Belichick, they took big swings. It's not their fault that they had to land on Sorensen, who's going to be fine anyways, guys. He'll be fine. This is who the players wanted. But they really went after. I mean, to say that Kyle Shanahan's not willing to switch his scheme, he went after Spagnuolo and he went after Bill Belichick, guys. Two guys that anybody with any thought process could have been like, yeah, that's not going to happen. There's zero chance you're getting either of those guys. In fact, we said on this channel, there's zero chance that they're getting Bill Belichick. It was Larry that threw out the idea, you know, they should go after Bill Belichick, and comes to find out they did do that. And it was like, Larry, that's great on the surface. At that time, I was doing shows with him, and I'm like, Larry, that sounds great, but there's no way in hell Bill Belichick is coming here to be the defensive coordinator. Like, that's a pipe dream. Turns out it was a pipe dream. Now, Larry was on it saying they should reach out, and they did do that. So he was right, and kudos to him. But anybody who actually thought that that was a real possibility, come on, man. It was never a possibility, but it sounds awesome. And it definitely did pacify fans. It was a talking point multiple times this season. People brought that up, actually. I heard people bring that up. Like, I mean, not their fault. They went after the best. They just weren't available. So, yeah, Pete Carroll, Robert Saleh, they get head coaching jobs. But if the 49ers were interested, what else were they supposed to do, guys? They got head coaching jobs. I mean, it's not like they didn't try. Moises says, do you think Glenn moves the needle for the New York Jets? I don't know. The New York Jets are a dumpster fire. I will say that I do like Glenn and his background, his history. I mean, you think about he's literally done everything that you can with the team. He was a player at a high level. He was a scout. He was a quality control coach and a position coach and now a coordinator and now a head coach. So he knows how everything works within an organization. I mean, he's very well versed. He's a leader of men. I mean, hell, honestly, if he would have been offered an offensive coordinator position, he probably would have taken that instead of a defensive coordinator spot just to get his feet wet. He just wanted to move up. I think he's a coach's coach. Now, does that translate? I don't know. But I do think he's a leader of men. And as long as he hires the right coordinators, I think he can be successful. But the Jets have a lot of work to do. They are up against it salary cap wise. They don't have a quarterback of the future. So I don't know. I don't know that they will be successful. And if they aren't successful, I don't know that they won't be because of anything he's doing wrong. Dave says, I've been out on spending money on the Niners for a year. Yeah, I mean, listen, it's your prerogative. You can spend your money however you want. It does make it hard to want to spend money when the teams doesn't seem to be going in the direction that you want, for sure. Dave Barclay says, wasn't Glenn a Jet? He was. That gives him equity on the team. Yeah, for sure. He was a Jet. And then when he came back to the NFL, he was a scout for the Jets. So he was a Jet technically twice. So there you go. There you go. Yeah. Oh, and that was the other thing. Yeah. Last year they wanted Ulbrich. Ulbrich was the other name, but it was like, well, he's with the Jets. So they wanted a guy that they were never going to have a chance to interview in Ulbrich. They wanted a guy in Bill Belichick who was never going to take that job. And they wanted a guy in Spagnuolo who they knew 24 hours later was re-signing with the Chiefs. That was their big plan last year. Their big plan this year, seemingly, is Robert Saleh, who has a great chance to get a head coaching job, and Pete Carroll, who has a great chance to get a head coaching job. That's not a plan. That's a pipe dream. Like, I don't know. It's wild to me. But, again, they might get lucky. Maybe Robert Saleh doesn't get a head coaching position and they end up getting him. And it's funny because I know the response will be like, oh, see, you just all this stress and all that for no reason. You just made a big deal for no reason, Jess, like you always do. And it's like, okay, cool. So the process was right. You're telling me that the process was right. Okay, sure. It was right. Moises Rosales says, we'll be going to San Francisco at New York Giants next season. So I guess I'm technically giving my money to the Giants. Also, it's 10 degrees here. Ugh. I wonder when that game is going to be played. I'm excited to see the schedule and when games are actually going to be played. Dave Barclay says there is a lot of guys still there. Rex Ryan, more. I don't think Rex Ryan wants to be a defensive coordinator. He wanted to be the head coach of the Jets specifically. He wants to be a Jet. He wanted to be the head coach of the Jets. I don't think there's any chance that he would do that. I do think that I do think that there are guys out there that would be good. I saw somebody say Ron Rivera in my chat in one of my comments earlier. Maybe I've thrown out Mike Pettin. I think a very good coordinator. So it's not like there aren't guys available, but they haven't shown any interest in any of those guys. None of them. So I'm just saying for guys who sat up there and said, we're excited to really go through this process and take it seriously and interview a bunch of guys and see what we want. And we're willing to make schematic changes and whatever it's going to take. They've done nothing in 2 weeks since then. Nothing. They've interviewed one person. One. Technically, they've interviewed 3, but one of them is in the building already. One of them is Robert Saleh, who they know everything about, and Deshae Townsend. I mean, are they wrapped up with the special teams coordinator position? No. No, they're not, because they're not interviewing for that either. They interviewed a guy like a week ago. John Fossil was available, not fired. The head coach got fired from Dallas. So the whole coaching staff was gone essentially, outside of Zimmer, their defensive coordinator. And John Fossil, who has been arguably the best special teams coordinator over the last 5 seasons, was available and available for quite some time, just took a position with the Tennessee Titans. I think yesterday or today. Didn't even get an interview. Didn't even get an interview with the 49ers. So it's not like they're just doing this at defensive coordinator. They're doing this at special teams too. They're just not doing anything. I don't get it. Why? Like, what is the best that can happen for this? That they get lucky, Robert Saleh falls into their lap and doesn't get a head coaching position? Okay, cool, it worked out. But there's a lot of things that people do that are stupid that work out. It doesn't make it smart or sound business decisions. Doesn't make any of that's the right thing to do just because it worked out. Like, the process is broken. Zero interviews. Zero interviews. I mean, okay, but he also had the number 1 ranked special teams 2 out of the last 4 years. So, and his brother was a coach in this league too. The Fossil name is known. His late brother. So I guess he's known because of Hard Knocks, but also the statistics show that he had the number 1 special teams 2 out of the last 4 years. And I believe was top 10 the other 2 years. You didn't even interview that guy. So who's the guy then? Because we thought it was going to be Sorensen. Like, Sorensen would just slide into that position, right? But it was just reported yesterday that it doesn't sound like Sorensen's going to be the guy. So who is the guy? Or how about with Saleh? Robert Saleh, who you're talking about here? For sure, I guess, but you don't want to be prepared in case he gets a head coaching job that he's clearly in the running for? Clearly in the running for. Jared, 2 weeks ago, I made a video when it was reported he was their guy. I made a video saying, I got a weird feeling he's going to get the Jaguar position. If I thought that, there's no possibility that anybody within the 49ers did any digging around the league to see how serious of a candidate he might be. Like, it's been pretty clear he's been a serious candidate there for a while. For 2 weeks, essentially. And they were willing to interview Deshae Townsend after it came out that Robert Saleh was the guy. So why do any interviews then, if that's the point? I mean, interviewing Deshae Townsend kind of puts that point to rest. Like, okay, well, they started the process because they know that maybe Robert Saleh might not be available, but then they just ended it there. How about anybody, Jared? How about just anybody with a pulse? Anybody with a pulse. I mean, this is crazy. This is like rent's coming up in 2 weeks. And you're like, guys, I got a plan. Well, what's your plan? You lost your job. You don't have any money in the bank. Guys, I got a plan. What's your plan? I bought a lottery ticket. Okay. Did it win? I don't know. I'm waiting for 2 weeks. Rent's due in 2 weeks. I'll scratch it then. I'll let you know if I won then. But I'm sure I did. So have you put in any applications to try to find a job, or have you asked to do any yard work or just anything that can make money to help you make rent? No. I got a plan, guys. The lottery ticket. Well, just scratch the lottery ticket then to see if you want. No. I'll wait. I'm good. Okay. Cool, man. Good plan. It's a great plan. It's a plan, sure. It's a plan, but it's not a very sound plan. It's great. I can't, honestly, I'm fine with the difference of opinion. I don't know how anybody can sit here with a straight face and be like, back this team up right now, or back them up for this lack of plan, clear lack of direction here. And you know it's a lack of direction because it was reported by Tim Kawakami, who is very plugged in, that there was essentially panic when they found out today that Robert Saleh might get the position. What? How is that possible? How are you just now figuring this out, that it was a possibility? But listen, I'm overreacting. I totally understand it. I get it. They got it all figured out. I'm sure it's all good. If Robert Saleh gets hired, I'm sure that somebody awesome will end up being the guy. So, but it does beg the question, like the 49ers before, one thing that we could rely on before, regardless of anything else, no matter like how crazy things got, that the 49ers were a desired destination. Can we say that for sure now? Can we say for sure that the 49ers are a desired destination anymore? Because last year they struck out on defensive coordinators. This year, they haven't brought anybody in. I mean, maybe they reached out. Let's give them a little bit of leeway for a second. Maybe I'm wrong, and maybe they have reached out to guys around the league to bring in for interviews. And maybe those guys said, thanks, but no thanks. We're good. I'll go interview with this team. Maybe I'll get that job. Maybe I won't. That's a possibility. That is very much a possibility. But then that's another issue that we have, is that maybe it's not a desired destination anymore. I mean, we had multiple players last year sign elsewhere after being offered by the 49ers. Multiple players. We had the linebacker. Remember, they had their linebacker. I forget his name. He went to the Dallas Cowboys, changed his mind. The legal tampering period happened. He was going to be the guy. Changed his mind a day later. They went with Campbell. They brought in, I think, Rayshon Jenkins, the safety from the Jags. They brought him in, offered him, gave him a deal right in front of his face. He then took that deal, went to the Seattle Seahawks and said, can you match it? They said yes, and he signed with them. Now here we are, second coaching cycle, and it's like, are we sure that people want to be here? Because before, everybody wanted to be here, man. Everybody wanted to be a 49er. They are winning. The culture's awesome. Kyle Shanahan's a young genius. They've got all their ish together. And now, potentially for the second straight offseason, they're getting spurned left and right. I mean, think about it. And I've had people, I've seen a lot of people, their take is, why would Robert Saleh take the head coaching job with the Jaguars when he could come here and be the defensive coordinator and pump his name back up and re-enter the market next year? Are we sure that that's even a thing or a possibility? I mean, you're talking about a guy in Robert Saleh who was just a head coach for the first time in his career, was unsuccessful, regardless of why. Yes, the Jets are a dumpster. I get all of that. They're a dumpster fire. Totally understand it. I'm not blaming Robert Saleh for the way that that situation went. But regardless, he didn't prove that he can win as a head coach. That much we know, no matter what the reason. Now, all of a sudden, he's already getting potentially offered another head coaching position that same offseason with zero proof that he can be a good head coach. Why would he choose to be a defensive coordinator if offered a head coaching position somewhere else when there's no guarantee that you're going to lead that defense back to the promised land? Not even just the 49ers, by the way. Let's just remove the 49ers out of it, regardless of where he was going to go. He could go to Miami for all I care. There's no guarantee that you're going to lead a defense to being a really good defense and then be the hot candidate next offseason. Of course he would take the head coaching position. You can't take a back step and then hope that things are going to work out. And even if he does a really good job, it doesn't mean that he's going to be a hot candidate next year. People could sit on it for a year and be like, we saw Robert Saleh. That didn't work out. There's this new guy who's the defensive coordinator for the Saints that's really good. We want to hire him. Or this Liam Cohen's available, or whoever, right? Maybe Joe Brady doesn't get a job with the Bills and they win a Super Bowl this year, and then next year they go back to back. Offensive coordinator for the Bills. He's the hot candidate. Or maybe Notre Dame goes back to the championship game next year, or the Final Four. Nice young coach for Notre Dame, and he's willing to go to the NFL. You don't know what's going to happen. So he has to jump on this opportunity. Of course he's going to jump on the opportunity. Going back to be the defensive coordinator for the 49ers is a major backstep, even if you're taking a head coaching position with a bad organization. It just wouldn't be smart for him to do that. So I understand why Robert Saleh is doing what he's doing. I don't know. I don't know if it's a desired destination anymore. I mean, think about it from the outside looking in. Take your 49ers red and gold glasses off and just look at this team, analyze this roster, this defensive roster. Would this be a spot that you want to come coach for? Knowing you have to run what Kyle Shanahan wants you to, even if philosophy-wise you don't agree with it. You want to do something completely different. Knowing that they have a major weakness in stopping the run at all three levels at this point. They don't have defensive tackles they can rely on. They got to revamp that whole room. The linebacking room is in major flux. It's not just Dre Greenlaw. I think they have 5 linebackers that are free agents. That room's in major flux. Your best safety, arguably your best safety, maybe Malik Mustafa is now, but your clear other best safety is also a free agent in Talanoa Hufanga. So you're coming into a situation that unless they revamp this thing very quickly and effectively in one offseason, you don't have the horses to stop the run, number one. And number two, you have to run the system that Kyle Shanahan says you have to run because that's his preferred system, even if you don't agree with it. And to top it off, the 2 guys before you got fired after one season. One of them had the number 3 scoring defense in the NFL. Number 3. And your team went to a Super Bowl and didn't lose, by the way, because of the defense. He got fired because he didn't jive with the team. What if I don't jive with the team? What if they don't like me as much as they like Robert Saleh and D'Amico Ryans? Am I going to get fired even if I have the best defense? Well, that's not very reassuring. And then they get to choose their guy essentially. They promote within because he's a guy who's loved by the roster. So then even if I am loved by the roster, but I don't do great my first year, I don't get a second chance to right this wrong. I don't know. I don't know that I would want that position. Now, there are some upsides for sure. The upside is, what if everything does work out? Very talented team, offensively as well. After a 6-11 season, what if we come in and I have a top 5 defense and we go to a Super Bowl again? All of a sudden, I might be a hot candidate. Like, that is possible too. It's not all bad. I just think when I make a decision, I'm weighing all the pros and cons, and I'm making a decision based off of those pros and cons. And I think the cons outweigh the pros if I'm looking at this job analytically. So I don't know that it's a desired situation. I don't. They reached out to me. All right. I was offered the job. Moises says, ignore the boss, Jesse. They always come from the cheap seats. Us real ones know you just give your unbiased view and just want to see this team win a ring. Dude, more than anything, I want to see this team win a ring. More than anything. Every thought or take that I have comes from a space of wanting the 49ers to win a ring. 30 years since I last saw them win a ring. I was 11 years old. 11. Yeah, I remember it. I do remember it. But my youngest son turns 11 this year. My youngest son will be the same age this year that I was the last time the 49ers won a Super Bowl. A little frustrated that it hasn't happened in 30 years. A little tired of the quest for 6 rhetoric. A little tired of the jokes from other fan bases that are like, hey, get your VHS tapes out. Not that it's much better. I have all the Super Bowls, all 5 Super Bowls on a DVD, though, since those aren't outdated. Yeah, man, I want to see him win. I do. Cryptic says, what is your ideal scheme? I always enjoyed the 3-4. The Smith Bros combo back in Harbaugh days could have been legendary if Alden stayed out of trouble. Man, that was a great tandem. Those two, for sure, great tandem. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I like aggression. I've never been a fan of like fighters who wait back and counterpunch. I've never been a fan of defenses that play just soft coverage. Like I want a punch you in the mouth defense, man. Like my favorite defenses to watch are like the Ravens or even that 49er. That 49ers defense was flying around, making plays, hurting players. Like how many highlights do we show of that divisional game against the Saints when Dante Whitner hit their running back? What is it? Pierre something. Anyway, whatever his name was, knocked him out, man. Like that's a highlight on replay every time we make it to the playoffs. Why do we love Ronnie Lott? Because Buddy could hit, man. Buddy could hit. He was aggressive. We love Ray Lewis. We love Ed Reed. We love Terrell Suggs. I mean, that's the defense I want. So regardless of scheme, I guess, whether it's 3-4, 4-3, cover 2, cover 3, cover 4, cover 1, cover 0, cover 6, I don't care. Can you be aggressive? Are you laying the wood on people? Are you ball hawking? Are you out here confusing opposing quarterbacks? I don't think there's anybody who didn't like Sean Taylor or Troy Polamalu or didn't like the Ravens defense in the early 2000s or was around in the 80s and be like, yeah, you know, the Bears a little too aggressive for my liking. No. I want aggressive defenses. None of this soft zone coverage, wide 9. No. I'm over it, man. That's why I wanted Mike Pettin. He came from the Ravens in the early 2000s, then was the defensive coordinator for the Jets under Rex Ryan, the same one that brought them to AFC championship games, that had Bart Scott. Can't wait. Man, I love that. That's my style of defense. So Calvin says Philly signed DC Fangio last year. Even when the Eagles were in the playoffs, they had a plan. Niners seem to be expecting coaches to come to them. The Niners could have hired Vic Fangio 2 off seasons ago instead of Steve Wilkes. Remember Vic Fangio? It was reported he was signing with the Miami Dolphins. I don't know if you guys remember how this whole thing played out. So 2 off seasons ago, actually 2 training camps ago, he was in the 49ers building as a consultant around the 49ers, helping them out. The year that the Eagles went to the Super Bowl, that offseason, before the Chiefs-Eagles Super Bowl. So they had just lost the NFC Championship to the Rams that offseason. They brought him in as a consultant. He was around the building, okay? He's not coaching anywhere for a year, what have you. Then he, for the playoff run, consults with Philly. They go to the Super Bowl, right? They end up losing the Super Bowl. Now Vic Fangio is a hot name again. Miami wants to hire Vic Fangio. In fact, it's reported that Vic Fangio is going to Miami. Then DeMeco Ryans gets hired and the 49ers job is available. And Vic Fangio puts the brakes on the Miami job and says, hold on. He wants to interview with the 49ers. He wanted to be the defensive coordinator here again. Shanahan interviews him, doesn't hire him. He goes to Miami. He's there for a year. Now he's in Philly. Vic Fangio. So we can say, hey, the 49ers were really willing to change things up for Spagnuolo and Bill Belichick, and they went after some big fish. Vic Fangio was available, and he wanted to be here, and they said no and brought in Steve Wilkes and then fired him a year later. That's how that went down. That's crazy to me. Crazy. Why? Because the 49ers and Shanahan wanted to continue to run what he wanted to run, and Vic Fangio was never going to go for that, and Steve Wilkes did. So that's why Steve Wilkes ended up here. All day, every day, Kim says 49ers burned some NFL bridges with the Wilkes firing. Yeah, that's a possibility. Maybe. Sounds like he's going to get the defensive coordinator job for the Jets as well. We'll see. Hung Meow says, why not hire Ken Norton Jr., who people forgot? Sure. Sure. Interview him at least. I don't care. Listen, if they go through 5, 6, 7 interviews, fresh names, people that have been in the position, and they land on somebody, but they take the process seriously, I guess that's what I'm asking for. It took me 49 minutes to get to where I actually wanted to be. I just want them to portray that they're taking the process seriously. That's all I'm asking for. They're the ones that said they were going to love this opportunity of getting out in front of this and not having to hire right after going to a Super Bowl and being the last team in the fray and being able to interview multiple people. And they haven't done it. They haven't taken it seriously, or at least they haven't portrayed that. At least portray that you're taking it seriously. Interview multiple people in case you don't get your guy in Robert Saleh, which is very likely. And then whoever you land on, it's like, at least you could say, hey, Robert Saleh was the guy. They interviewed 5 or 6 other people. They landed on Ken Norton Jr. or whoever that is. All right, maybe not ideal. Maybe I like the hire, maybe I won't. But one thing I can't say is they didn't take it seriously. And that's what I feel like right now. They're not taking it seriously. And we got a lot of people that are standing up for that as if they are. They're not. Nico says, who gets a ring first? Your son's team or yours? Oh, man. I mean, if you told me the Ravens or the 49ers, one of those teams is going to win a Super Bowl in the next 5 years, I would bet everything I own that it's the Ravens, not the 49ers, unfortunately. I mean, that's just the reality. They've got an elite quarterback. They've got an infrastructure that brings in really, really good draft picks. Now, they've got their own issues, by the way. It's not like they're a flawless team. If they were, they would be playing this weekend. But it's hard for me to believe that the 49ers, as currently constructed, are going to win a Super Bowl in the next 5 years over the Ravens. And it's possible neither of them do, by the way. I'm not saying either of them do, but if you said for sure, guys, I went into the future for the next 5 years and one of these two teams won a Super Bowl, who are you betting on? I don't know how you could say the 49ers at this standpoint. So I would go with the Ravens. Dave says Bills already got flags for next week versus the Chiefs. Flagged for their pregame presser. Dave says Lyle's epic mistakes, Fangio, Brady, Lance, so on. Yeah, don't even get me started on the Tom Brady stuff. Frisco Shills says, is this the long-term impacted of firing Wilkes? Yeah, somebody else brought it up. Yeah, maybe. I mean, maybe they're less desirable now because of that. That might be totally fair. That could be totally fair. I don't know that to be true, but it could be for sure. Could be. Yeah, for sure. For sure. So just say it, Matt. Is he better than Lamar Jackson? They're both on the open market right now. All 32 teams need a quarterback, and you only have 2 choices. You can take Lamar or you can take Brock. What do you think those 32 teams do? How many of the 32 say Brock over Lamar? And if the answer is more than 0, you're wrong. So this whole like mental gymnastics that we do, like, well, he has more playoff wins. Cool, man. So Matt, and anybody who uses this as an argument, is Jalen Hurts a good quarterback? Half take Lamar? Come on, man. All 32 and then the 2 expansion teams that don't yet exist take Lamar Jackson. What are we talking about? Like, this is not even a discussion. It shouldn't be a discussion. I don't even know why I'm entertaining it at this point. It's crazy. Every team takes Lamar. Every team takes Lamar. Period. We saw them on the field together. We know what that looks like. Like, this is crazy. There's no way that we're like divulging and bringing a conversation down to just strictly he has more playoff wins. Cool. Jimmy Garoppolo has more playoff wins too. So does Nick Foles. So does Trent Dilfer. So who cares? Who cares? He could retire tomorrow and would be a first ballot Hall of Famer. If he retired tomorrow, he's first ballot Hall of Fame already. This is crazy. I mean, my goodness. Cryptic says, why you think KC is so hated? Most hated dynasty. I think all dynasties are pretty hated. I think the Bulls were hated in the 90s. I think the Patriots were definitely hated. I mean, how many chinks in the armor did we find with the Patriots and their cheating scandals and this and that and the refs? This is pretty normal. I think this is pretty normal. I think, but again, dynasties do sell to a certain extent because people tune in to watch them lose. I mean, this is no different than Floyd Mayweather. A lot of people like Floyd Mayweather, but Floyd Mayweather sold fights because there was a belief or a hope that whoever he was fighting could be the guy to finally beat him. Like, that was the hope. So he sold a ton of pay-per-views off of people hating him, hoping he would lose. And it just didn't happen. And that's what's happening with Kansas City as well. Dave says Ray Charles can see that Lamar is great and Purdy is. I don't get it. I don't get it, guys. I don't get it. Purdy's fine. He's not a bad quarterback. Like, both can be true. He's not Lamar Jackson. I mean, I don't. And this is just crazy. It's just crazy. Exactly. I mean, listen, we can talk about, Lamar choked again in the playoffs after playing really good against the Steelers. In a snow game, on the road, without his best receiver. If Brock Purdy was in those same conditions, do you know how many excuses you would make for him if he didn't play well? And the crazy thing is if Lamar somehow would have pulled that out in the end and they would have won, nobody would be talking about it because that last drive was legendary. 88 yards. Not only was Zay Flowers out, but Rashad Bateman got injured as well. So he's without his top two receivers, 88 yards in the snow on the road. It would have been a legendary drive. And everything he did up to that point wouldn't have mattered. Most people would have forgot about it if one thing would have gone slightly different. If Andrews would have caught the 2-point conversion and somehow they won in overtime, nobody would talk about it. But they didn't. And they're talking about it. And I'm not saying it's not justified. By the way, yes, it's completely justified to have the conversation. He didn't play well in the first half. He did some decent things, but he didn't play well. But the point is that if this was Brock and the 49ers in that same situation, excuses would have been made. I was literally told by many people, hey, when you're talking about Brock Purdy and his stats, you can't even just erase the Buffalo Bills game. I'm like, why would I erase that game? It was in the snow. Oh, okay. So now we can just erase games that are in the snow. But when Lamar does it in the snow, we can't erase it. We saw Brock in the freaking snow this year. in Buffalo, oddly enough. Did it look anything like what Lamar Jackson was able to do? Anything close to that? Hell no. Not even close to that. We saw Brock during an MVP bid season, in a season that they went to the Super Bowl, at home on Christmas, go heads up with Lamar. Did they look even remotely close to being on the same skill level at all? No, not even close. This is crazy. Crazy. Goodness sakes. Cool. They weren't even close. So they weren't in Buffalo. It wasn't freezing cold and there wasn't snow. Not even close. One was a playoff game, one wasn't. So pressure-wise, it wasn't close either, right? How about the next week when it was just raining in Santa Clara at home? How did it look then? I would say those conditions weren't near as bad as what they just played in. How did it look there? How did it look with the season on the line in rain at home? How did it look? It wasn't snowing. So my eyes are just deceiving me when they would pan up and they would show that it was snowing. Okay, cool. It wasn't snowing. I'm sure it wasn't cold either. So okay, so now we're establishing, Brian, that, like I said, we can't even talk about it with Brock, right? It's not even fair to talk about. Like we can't even establish groundwork for a fair conversation to be had. But you want me to entertain that Lamar Jackson and Brock Purdy are even close to the same level? Get out of here with that. Dave says if Purdy was in the AFC, would he even? No. Imagine if Brock had to play in the AFC North in December. He had to play, let's say he was the Baltimore Ravens quarterback, and he had to go to Pittsburgh, go to Cleveland, go to Cincinnati, and play at home in December and January. How do you think that would go for him? Because we have some pretty good defined evidence that it wouldn't go very well. What if he was in the NFC East and he had to play in Philly in December and January when it's snow? Imagine. Okay, let's do this. Since we're talking levels, do you think the conditions were bad in Philadelphia? Were the conditions bad in Philadelphia? And do you think Brock in those conditions could do anything close to what Stafford did in that game? And if so, what's your thoughts? What's your evidence? Can I count that game? Were those conditions bad enough for you? I mean, Dave says Brock doesn't appear to be in the same league as Lamar. He's not. Ryan Hart says, cancel the show, Jesse. Shake my head. People are delusional. Briscoe Shill says, ideal defense equals win, build based on the best players. Yeah, I mean, and Kyle did talk about that. He's like, listen, the reason I like this scheme is that when we have the right pieces in place, it's a sound scheme because we're not putting our players out of position. We don't feel like we have to be overly aggressive and blitz a ton because we just have the right players in the right places. But he also admitted that when you don't have the exorbitant amount of talent, that you probably got to change things up schematically. So who can be that guy? And is Kyle given the autonomy? I mean, he has to give the autonomy as well. And he wants a guy who he believes can come in and make those changes, and he can trust to make those changes. That's why he's so high on Robert Saleh, because Robert Saleh's done the job and he can just trust him. Hey, you take the defense. We're good. He's got to find somebody like that. So if Robert Saleh is not the guy, he has to go with somebody that he fully trusts, that can make those adjustments and not get in their way. I don't know that guy exists. If it's not Robert Saleh, I'm curious. We'll see, I guess. But yeah, he definitely, the ideal defense equals win. Build based on the players. Yeah, I mean, you gotta build a scheme and run adjustments based off of what you have and don't have, and that changes game to game with injuries and what have you. Guys coming back from IR, guys going on IR, like that literally can change week to week. That can change play to play. You got to be able to adjust on the fly. So for sure, all that holds true. Definitely holds true. Mm-hmm. See, what are you guys talking in here? Yeah, I don't listen. Crazy. Stafford's old as hell is much better than Purdy. Yeah, I mean, Stafford definitely I have in the elite category, but he showed that there might be some regression this year. Now, I will say in the playoffs, he definitely stepped up his game, and it did come out that he had 4 broken ribs. So I don't know how much that played into it, but it felt like he was on his way to regressing. And I was like, well, let's watch this playoff run, because if it's not good, maybe he's not in that elite category anymore. I will say that after 2 playoff games, he's still pretty damn good. He's still pretty damn good. But eventually he won't be, and he is aging. And hopefully Brock keeps ascending, and there will be the meet, and Brock will pass him and he'll go down. If that is, if Stafford stays around long enough. I mean, he might only play next year, and then that doesn't happen. I don't know. But the Rams, I mean, geez, that's a team that we got to compete with for sure coming up. So, Bye Victor says, new member, appreciate you. Gizmo Malti says, it's not about the same league. It's about the same tier. Brock is not a first tier quarterback. Mahomes, Jackson, and Allen are first tiers. Who denies Brock is tier 2? It just depends. I mean, I don't know. Tiers are better. I do think tiers are better personally. But who else is tier 1? Is Burrow tier 1 for you? I feel like Burrow should be in there as well. Like if I'm doing a tier 1, tier 2, I would say Burrow would be in the tier 1. Tier 2, I would go Jaden, Stafford, Herbert, and then probably do a tier 3, and that's where like the Stroud, Purdy, I don't know who else that you may want to throw in there. I don't think I'd put Jordan Love in there. I'm not a big Jordan Love guy, and he hasn't shown a lot to me. He's super, like, my biggest thing with quarterbacks is, can you protect the football? And if you can't protect the football, then you better be like, when Josh Allen didn't protect the football, he was leading the league in touchdowns. So it's like, okay, well, you're also the reason that your team is even in these games. You're leading them in rushing. You're leading the league in touchdowns. You can have some turnovers. I'll give you some leeway. But Jordan Love just turns the frickin' ball over a lot. And sometimes he has 4 touchdown games, but sometimes he has 3 turnover games. But he doesn't protect the football for me. So I don't know. But I do agree. Tiers are better. I'd have to like really sit down and think about it. Dave Barclay says, I do Gizmo most the world many tiers lower. I don't know that I would go many tiers lower. I'd put Baker in that tier now as well. I think what Baker's, and I cannot stand Baker Mayfield. He's okay now. He's kind of growing on me. I couldn't stand Baker Mayfield. As a prospect, I did not like Baker at all. When he was in Cleveland, the way he acted, I was not a Baker guy. He's starting to grow on me a little bit. I mean, you have to give him respect. He's playing good football. I think Baker's up there now. He's earned that. But the thing is like, if you're not in that elite tier, like that number 1 tier, maybe number 2 tier, like everything else behind that fluctuates pretty regularly. I mean, we've seen Kyler Murray, Dak Prescott, Kirk Cousins, Tua Tagovailoa, Brock Purdy, CJ Stroud, Jordan Love, Ryan Tannehill. Who else am I missing? Sam Darnold for this year. We've seen a lot of guys start creeping around that 10 to 12 range for a pretty extended period of time. It gets dicey once you get towards the tail end of, once you get past like 6 or 7. It gets very dicey behind them. And sometimes your guy may be there and sometimes he's not, and it ebbs and flows. And that's why Jared Goff, didn't even say Jared Goff's name, Jared Goff. We've seen a lot of these guys prove that when things are great around them, they can play very good. Very good. There's a lot of quarterbacks that can play very good when things are right around them. Now, there are also quarterbacks that can't play good no matter what. I definitely agree with that. And that's why they would be outside of my top 15, top 17 range, because I feel like I can't trust them at all. But even Jimmy was in the top 12 range. If we're just keeping it a stack for a season or two, he was there. So a lot of guys come and go out of that range. It's, can you stack years? Can you show me years? And right now, listen, I threw Jaden Daniels in there. That's right now. I gotta see it. I love what Jaden's doing. I loved what CJ did last year, but I got to see it for a couple years before I'm like, yes, you've solidified yourself as that dude for a long period of time. Like right now in this moment, hell, last year Brock Purdy would have been in there and CJ Stroud would have been in there, and now they're out. So like it just fluctuates like crazy year to year. We'll see what Jaden Daniels can do. Can he do it again? I would think so, but I would think that Brock and CJ would have ascended this year, and Jordan Love. I would have think 3 young quarterbacks who seem to be on the rise. I think a lot of people would have thought Dak Prescott, after his first couple years in the league, would have ascended. I think a lot of people would have thought Carson Wentz, after his first couple years in the league, would have ascended. Jalen Hurts would have ascended. Kyler Murray would have ascended. Now, I do recognize and understand that nobody's had the rookie season that Jaden's have. Kudos to him, by the way. You look at all the other quarterbacks that have made it to a championship game, a conference championship game as a rookie. They all had top 3 defenses. His defense is ranked number 18th. So what he's doing is special and unique. I agree with that. But that doesn't mean that he's always going to be there. We got to see it. Dave says, Baker, best of the guys who seemed gone but came back. Who else is in that conversation? Sam Darnold, Geno Smith. Is that it? I don't know that list is very long. So, yeah, Baker definitely is the best out of those guys for sure. For sure. And he's been playing really good football. He has. He's been playing good football. All right, y'all. I got to get up early. I appreciate you. Tomorrow night, 9 p.m. Eastern, I'll be on Bleacher Report. And then at 9:45 here, 9:45 p.m. Eastern, I'll be here for the call-in show open mic. So for those of you that want to have it out and want to have the conversation and just tell me how great Brock Purdy is and how much of an idiot I am and he's better than Lamar and Herbert and whoever else you want to throw out there. Josh Allen loses this week, and I'm sure he'll be better than him soon too. It's your chance. Call in tomorrow. Phone lines will be open. So can't wait to hear from y'all. Have a good night. Peace.